Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to the fifth part of my set review for the Fall of Argenport, today with the shadow cards. Today now we're going to talk about the first part of the shadow cards, so let's dive right in. Okay, so first we have the Shadow Standard, Cable Standard, Cabal Standard. Cabal Standard is one of the better standards for sure. The Cabal tactic, really powerful, give 2 of your units +2 attack and quick draw this turn, so basically a rapid shot that you can split across 2 units, which is really nice. Well, actually you have to split it across 2 units, you cannot give 1 unit +4/+0. But yeah, it's a really powerful card in Constructed. The problem is it lends itself best to aggressive decks, similar to Shugo tactic, and aggressive decks are not very good at supporting depleted power sources like that, so I'm not sure how many you can in the end afford to run, especially in the 25 power deck. That also is not very likely to actually hit 5 power, and then this card is just a depleted Shadow Sigil that doesn't work with your seats. So yeah, a bit problematic there, but in a vacuum the card's really powerful. And in Limited this is a great addition to any deck, so just pick it up if there's nothing even better to pick. Next we have Harbinger's Bite, Lifesteal, Nightfall. You all know by now how much I dislike Nightfall. I guess they wanted to give us a bunch of cheap Nightfall tools to make the Nightfall payoff cards more playable. And then yeah, you get to deal 2 damage to the enemy player, so this is basically 1 power, deal 3, gain 2, and yeah, you take 1, 2, or like gain 3, deal 3, gain 1 effectively. And yeah, both players get to draw a card. Not a particularly good card. The damage effect is neat, but yeah, throwing away a card to deal damage to the opponent, not really what you want. And Nightfall, rarely what you want to do either. So I wouldn't even like this in Limited unless my deck has a lot of Nightfall payoff, then I might consider it. Next we have Horrifying Helm, another Limited only card at best, and even in Limited I think it's not very great. You get +0/+3 for 1, and with Spellcraft you can pay 4 in total, and then you get to swap a unit's attack and health in addition, which together with Horrifying Helm turns the Helm into a bit more impactful weapon, but still pretty weak, so maybe okay as a filler in Limited at best, but yeah, nothing great. Next we have Sewer Sludge. This is the first really great addition in my opinion. Awesome 1-drop. We get a 1 power 0/1 that gets +1/+1 every time you play a unit that has more attack or more health than the Sewer Sludge. So you play this on turn 1 and it just keeps growing and usually easily becomes a 3/4, sometimes even bigger, and that's amazing for a 1-drop. You get the slow start, like on turn 2 you only attack for 1 instead of 2 with other more aggressive units, but it's totally worth it to get a real unit rather than a 1-drop that is outclassed very quickly. It's a great addition for aggressive mid-range decks and aggro decks alike. And in Limited, this is actually worse than in Constructed, I would say, but still pretty solid, especially because it scales so well. If your deck is a bit more aggressive, this seems like a nice addition. Next we have Spite Feeder. Unfortunately, I think this will usually be too weak in Constructed, although it's nice to have more self-mill options, but milling someone for 2, yourself or your opponent, just not powerful enough, and a 1/1 flying for 1 also doesn't really make up for it. Sporefolk at least mills for 5, so it has a higher impact in terms of milling the stuff you want to mill, while this just is yeah, too low impact of a body and an effect in Limited and Constructed, I think. Next we have Xenon Live Speaker. This is a decent card in Constructed. It's not likely to make it anywhere, although with the ultimate turning it into a 4/2, it is pretty decent, and who knows, maybe it's good enough to put into some kind of attempt at Life Force, although by now I kind of gave up the hope that Life Force will ever be reasonably good enough, no matter how many cards we get, which is unfortunate because it's kind of cool and can do powerful stuff, but just kind of yeah, has too many issues and weaknesses, I guess, to be strong enough competitively. But yeah, give this guy a try maybe, and in limited. This is a very decent one-drop, I would say, since lifesteal can be very impactful, and the fact that it is not an irrelevant body, since you can turn it into a 4/2 later, makes it a pretty decent card in limited, I think. Next we have Abduct. The enemy player discards a unit of your choice from their hand, and then you steal it and put it into your void. So you basically discard an enemy unit into your own void, which can be nice sometimes with like cards like Dawnwalker and stuff like that, but mostly this will just be a treachery that puts it into your void instead of dealing 2 damage, which is not terrible, since the 2 damage on treachery don't always matter that much either, and it is a double faction card, like a 2-faction card, and this is a single faction card. The problem is, without a sideboard, this card is not very good. It's a card that is not very main deckable in most decks, and also not impactful enough to put in your market, so without having a sideboard where you would sideboard in 3 or 4 of these against slow mid-range decks, and control decks with enough units are just not gonna happen as of now with sideboards not being a thing most likely in competitive play going forward, which is very unfortunate because there are a lot of cool sideboard cards that won't work in markets. So pretty disappointed about that. This, for example, would be amazing in, say, Leanan deck against other time decks. You could just steal their Dawnwalkers and then recure them with your own fatties. Stuff like that. But yeah. And in limited, this is pretty decent if the format is slow enough and your deck isn't that fast or that aggressive. This could be a pretty solid way of getting rid of their best threats before they even hit the play. Next we have Back Alley Delinquent. I think this card is really amazing. It's the shadow version of the summon, discard a card to create a spell of the faction, 2 drops, and yeah, this is particularly good since Sabotage is a really good card to get, unlike a lot of the other things we've seen so far, so this is easily the best. And a 1/3 makes for a pretty decent blocker, which is exactly what decks that would like this effect often want against more aggressive decks to buy themselves time. The quick draw is a bit ridiculous since on a 1/3 it really doesn't do a whole lot unless you put weapons on it, which you usually won't. But this is great for Reanimation and Haunting Scream type decks, since you have an easy early controllable discard outlet that is much better than, say, Herald Song, because it actually comes with a body and provides defense against early aggression. You get Sabotage to make sure that your Haunting Scream gets through, or that your Grasping a Shadow target isn't killed immediately. It's just such a neat package. It's an early blocker, it's disruption, and it's a discard outlet. It's all you'd want in one card. It's also decent in mid-range decks that just looking for some utility defensive 2-drop, and then you can just play less actual Sabotages and still have the Sabotages in the matchups where they are good, especially against control or against aggro with a bunch of combo tricks and removal. So yeah, the body is a bit weak against control. That's like, or actually against control it's still fine. Like, it usually can attack for 1, so it's not that bad. It's worst against mid-range usually because a 1/3 is just not good at blocking or not good at attacking against the beefy mid-range units. So that's where it's worst. But against aggro the 1/3 is great and the Sabotage is decent. Against control the unit is okay and the Sabotage is great. So you get something every time really. At a limited this also seems like a pretty nice 2-drop. Next we have Black Hole War Leader. Amazing 2-drop. We get a 2-power 2/2. Nothing to write home about on the surface, but then it's a Minotaur, so hello Tavrot. Thanks. And when it hits the enemy player, increase her Inspire by +1/+1, and she gets +1/+1. And on Inspire units you draw get +X/+X, where X is the amount of times Black Hole War Leader hit the enemy player. So it's similar to Warcry, except that she has to connect the first time, but after that you don't have to attack anymore. You can just stay home and get Warcry 1 every turn on if you draw a unit. It doesn't work on weapons, so that's a downside. But yeah, there are also synergies with Dark Return and stuff like that, and cards that make units and then make you draw them and stuff like that. And the fact that she grows, like if you connect it once as a 3/3, she usually trade with something decent afterwards, or keep growing and snowball ahead and just win you the game. And not that many 2-drops can say they can just win the game on their own for you, basically. So yeah, I think she's really powerful in the right decks. You have to keep in mind though, you have to make sure that you can connect, which means you have to play enough ways for her to push through. So removal is better than combat tricks, unless your combat tricks provide overwhelm, and play enough versatile cheap early removal for War Leader to actually get a hit or two in until she's big enough to just attack without removal for good trades or jump blocks. And in limited, there's no difference. This is an amazing 2-drop in limited. Next we have Call the Deck. I think this card is overrated, but it's still a decent card. You basically get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, draw the best of them, the one that you like most, and put the other 2 on the bottom of your deck. It's not a fast spell, so that makes it a little weaker, and for 2 power this is still nothing to write home about, but it's a decent card if your deck is looking for that. But so far, not that many decks in my opinion are that interested in that effect. It's nice in more like combo-ish, reanimators, scream decks potentially, to find your pieces. But say in Feln control, for example, you already have your strategize and your wisdoms, and you can only play so many dirty cards. And in Fire Justice Shadow, for example, you have your wanted posters and quarries and stuff, and I like all of these better than Call the Deck. You also can only play so much dirtle stuff. So yeah, not too impressed by this card, but it's definitely a solid filler role player in Constructed, and in Limited as well. Next we have Fearbinder. This card is very bad, unfortunately, probably in both formats, but in Limited it might be okay. Once per turn you may pay 4, sacrifice 2 units to play a Fear Sum with their combined attack and health and Berserk. So yeah, that's a lot of investment. You invest 1 card and 6 power to get the first unit, and then you throw away 2 units to get that unit, basically just fusing 2 units together and giving them Berserk. It's just a really bad deal. Maybe in Limited it can be sometimes nice to like break open a stalled out late game, but that's about it. And last but not least, for the first part, we have Fenris Nitrate, a decent 2-drop. It's a 2 power 3/2 with a relevant unit type and unseen, and an ability that is nice against very reactive control decks. You may pay 3 to draw a card, and Fenris deals 3 damage to you and 1 damage to each cursed enemy. So yeah, a decent anti-control 2-drop that hits reasonably well, but nothing super exciting if you ask me. Alright, that's it for the first part of the Shadow cards. Stay tuned for the second part of the Shadow cards in a moment.